What a nice tone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Reverend Peter Panagore, and welcome to Not Church Sunday. This week, we're going to continue with the Gospel of Thomas, exploring and seeking answers as we go. Here we talk about myth and metaphor and mysticism by focusing primarily on the great mystical genius and teachings of the enlightened Jesus on Sunday mornings. At our Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 8, 9, and 8 a.m. Eastern Time, centering prayer, practice, meditations, we spend a little time reflecting on the teachings of the ancient mystics around the globe found in the literature. People as diverse as Lao Tzu and Julian of Norwich to help us be guided on our journeys of transformation by ever learning to listen quietly for the still small whispering voice of peace found within our hearts, inside our sacred hearts, inside of every heart, everywhere, and everyone. There is this place of goodness. And you don't have to take my word for it. Find out for yourself. Feel it as we gather as a group, each one of us bringing our candle flame, the flicker of our hearts, and we match them together and we pile them on the fire until we blaze. As Jesus said, where two or more are gathered, I am there, and make your eye single and your body will be filled with light. These practices work together, especially in large groups like ours this morning, and later on, if you're listening as a recording. So listen, the I am lives inside you and becomes magnified between us, within us, among us, as we make our eye single, letting our bodies be filled with the transformative vibration, the buzz, the presence, the peace within. Not Church Sunday seeks to create a community space where we share and grow the living presence of live within us by getting out of the way and giving the divine more space inside us. So, please, let's take a moment here to center ourselves together with 3 slow belly breaths, focusing your mind just below your belly button. Now, inhaling, holding, releasing, moving your mind up to your third eye, holding, releasing. Now let's close our eyes and do this together into your belly 3 times. May the peace be present with us today. The gospel stories tell us about the deepest parts of ourselves. Today is one of those occasions where the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mark, and Matthew all tell the same story. And here's a combined retelling. When we read fiction or watch movies, we often see ourselves reflected in the characters. In this story today, we and our perceptions of ourselves and the world around us are in this story too. We are the packed earth, the rocky ground, the thorns, and the good soil. We have the potential to sprout, grow, and multiply the goodness given to us by the sower with a capital S. Jesus said, "Look, listen, hearken, now, pay attention." A sower went out with a handful of seeds and scattered them. The seeds are potential. Some fell on the hard packed path, bounced around on top, looked pretty, but the birds came and pecked them up. Hard, packed hearts. Teaching and light can't penetrate, and they get rejected, the seeds do. And maybe these people tried their spiritual life for some time, but it kind of bounced off and they moved on. And they can't hear and they can't see. And maybe they're caught by the world, caught by illusion, by Maya, by things, desires, and wants, by power, riches, and the egoic mind and control of themselves. And it blinds them to the presence. And maybe they like the seeds, but the seeds bounce along the top of their soil and can't take root. Now, other seeds, they fell in the ledges with thinly coated topsoil. And the seedlings spring up quickly, but they can't take root. The sun comes out, dries up the soil, wilts the seedlings, and they burn up dead. There's just not enough soil. These people may want to see and hear, but after receiving the teaching, after some kind of transformative calling experience with a taste of the divine, along comes the adversity of the world, or simply other priorities in life, and they drop away from their practice, unable to sustain the life they thought they wanted. Awakening can't be added to a pile of goods like another thing for show. It's not a magic power that makes all suffering vanish. Awakening isn't an idea to try on and see how the outfit fits and matches with the rest of the clothes that you're wearing. Awakening is a transformation, and if it is to be sustained, it needs good soil, tended by the farmer. Awakening is a timeless moment of experience of non-self. You don't need to guess at it when it happens. You don't need to understand it or even the ramifications, but you know it when it happens to you. And you probably don't understand it, and you probably can't imagine the ramifications. The question is, after it happens to you, will you pursue it until it turns and pursues you? The other seeds fall among the thorns of the mind. Our thoughts and desires and sufferings of the world choke and starve the seeds. And the few that survive, the thorns, are eaten by caterpillars. The thorns and worms are our thoughts, our self-defined story, the identification of ourselves, who we are. Those are the thorns, the stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes the thorns, they're real pain in life. They're the sufferings that come at us in life too. But when we enter realization, the step that follows awakening, then we understand, we realize we are not who we thought we were at all. And here is where the trouble begins. Because when the seeds fall on the rich and clean soil, those seeds produce good fruit with a bearing of 60 per measure, says Jesus, or 120 per measure. One seed times 60, one seed times 120. But the trouble with realization is that when you learn that you are not who you thought you are, and that you don't actually exist, well, that's a hard thing for some people. That alone can choke people out, can make them wither. But it comes with a blessing. And the blessing is that as long as you are in the good soil, as long as your focus is inside the soil itself, as long as your roots go deeper and deeper, then it gives a multiplication of the oneness of being in your life without effort. The deeper your roots go inside the loose soil of your mind, the loosened soil of your soul, the more produce comes into your life and the world around you. It's this incredible experience, this thing that can happen to anyone. When the seed falls on the good soil of your soul, It can grow, but you do need to pluck out the thorns, pick out the worms, and nurture yourself in a meditative practice, a practice of prayer, a practice of listening. It's not ever really been about knowledge. It's not ever really been about how many books you've read and what kind of understanding you have. It's always only been about listening to the divine self inside of you, to feel the buzz inside yourself, to connect with the divine presence. So let's take just a moment and do just that. This is how we prepare the good soil. This is how we add fertilizer. This is how we clean the soil. It's all one effort of just being quiet and allowing the presence to live inside you. I want to thank you all for joining us here today. And I'm going to invite you to come to the Mystic Tea Salon afterwards. You can go to peterpanagore.love and find the the program tab and the Zoom link and the password. And I want to thank everyone for subscribing and for liking this video, but mostly for sustaining this whole process with the gifts you give each week. I appreciate that very much. As I've said, it's not about the language. It's not about what I'm saying or even what Jesus taught, because he had his hard time telling his disciples, his initiates, about what he was meaning as any mystic in any time, anywhere. It's difficult to do. But the power isn't just the words. The power is the presence itself that's experiential when we gather together. And that's really the purpose here. The purpose here is to gather our hearts together, because language itself can't contain the presence of the divine, not the totality of it. Heck, the world can't contain the totality of it. But together we can have an experience of the divine, have an experience of love. And we can prepare our soil. We can not throw seed on the path. We can not throw our seed into the thorns or onto the thin soil with the ledge. We can put all our seed right into the good soil, into the garden that we tend in our practice of gathering, in our practice of meditation, in our practice of daily living, making choices as we go along each day out of the center of our hearts, out of the connectedness to the divine. And the more we make those choices, the more the seed multiplies within us and gives fruit through our entire life, 100-fold, 120-fold. It's incredible what the presence of the divine can do for us if we merely let it, merely get out of the way of it, merely allow it to grow inside us, to quiet our own mind down, to perceive beyond the false self, to let that shatter so that one might be able to be in the presence itself. If you want to talk more about it in person, I'm available for talks, mentoring, coaching, counseling. Hey, thank you, David. Thank you, Ruth. Before we begin our little chat this morning, thanks, Kim Capital. I want to touch one more thing out of the Gospel of Thomas, which is the next saying. He says, I have cast fire upon the world, and see, I am guarding it until it blazes. This is the purpose of Jesus' coming. To show us the fire that's inside ourselves, to give us access to the light, to let the fire grow inside us as a group, as a community, as a global community, and not just us. This Fire has been tended for centuries inside individual hearts, all tended by the divine presence, all tended by love, by the Christ consciousness, by the light being itself, the ineffable, always tending the fire and the hearts that are available to it. And now, in this time period in the history of the world, we have the chance to turn this little blaze into a bonfire of global proportions. It's been being tended for centuries. We're tending it now. Let's tend it more and make the whole thing, the whole world ablaze with the presence of the divine inside the sacred place of our own hearts. Each one of us and together. I'll read that one more time. The Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, I have cast fire upon the world. And see, I am guarding it until it blazes. You know, when I first put up the Facebook page, which is called Near Death Experience video channel, I had a flaming heart. That was the cover page there. And someone wrote to me and said, oh, the flames, it's so much like hell. Well, the flame is the feeling. It's another description of the divine presence. I don't know if you've ever seen the painting of Jesus where he's got his heart, his chest opened up and his heart's sticking out. And there's like a little, Valentine heart, and there's a flame sticking out of it. This flame presence is the tingle, it's the buzz, it's the vibration, it's the fire, it's the light that's been tended in the world for centuries and is now here among us. When I say us, I don't just mean we folk who are here today. I mean among all the mystics and all the world who are all seeking the oneness of being. We nurture this flame in our meditation life by getting out of the way and allowing the presence to speak for itself. Jeepers creepers, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Susan and Lee and Kelly and Sybil. I'm going to move the teleprompter out of the way here now and talk a little bit more about tending the flame. Thank you, Kristen. Talk a little bit more about tending the flame. Tending the flame. Have you ever been a camp? Do you ever have a campfire? You gotta go out and gather wood ahead of time, and you've got to have tinder and kindling and logs and split and cut, and it's got to be dry, and you got to have matches, and you got to have a stack of wood there and a campfire built, and there has to be somebody to tend the fire. If there's nobody to tend the fire, then the fire goes out. It just does. It constantly has to have fuel. How do you fuel your fire? How do you keep your blaze burning? There's really, truly only one way to do that, and that's to get out of the way. The whole practice of spirituality, the whole deep practice of spirituality isn't an affirmation of a belief system. It's not a dedication to a dogma or a doctrine. What it is the awakening to the idea, it's awakening to the truth that you are not who you think you are, that I am not who I appear to be. This Peter self, that's not me. It's the place I live in. And when I tend my fire, I keep that fire burning so bright that it burns away my false self and allows more room for the divine presence. And when that happens, in that state of realization, the divine presence permeates all of life and leaks right from the heart out into the world and is shareable and is experiential. And serendipities happen and things align, and it doesn't eliminate suffering. Suffering actually helps it grow. But what it does do is connect you to the holy oneness of being, your home where you are from and where you are going, and give stability in the world. And when the seed in the soil grows, when that seed grows, it gives you so much more. 100-fold, 120-fold, 1,000-fold more. Jesus said, filling up and spilling over. There's so much of it. If only you decide to dive into it. It's really a matter of what you want. If you want the awakening state, it probably won't be what you expect it's going to be. It'll be better than that. It'll be better than that. But you have to want it more than anything else and practice wanting it. That's what meditation's for. Not to get things, but to be, simply to be with it. I'm going to stop chit-chatting here and look over and say, thank you, Charles, and thanks, Mary, thanks, Sean and Sommer. I'm going to take a look here and see if there's any questions or comments that you want to say today so that we can have a little chit-chat before Mystic Tea Salon. You're welcome for starting with breath and prayer and meditation to center ourselves. I'm going to try to make that a regular practice. Begin this with centering and end this, not church Sundays, with centering, so that the in-between part we can balance together in our centering selves. And I want to ask if you feel the divine presence here, if you've ever felt it here in this gathering, please let us know in the chat or in the comments, because that's really the purpose of Not Church. It's not so much what I have to say. It's really about trying to get out of the way and be present to the divine self, which is your task too. And we do this together, and the flame grows larger. And we feel it in our hearts or in our hands or in our bellies. We feel the vibration itself. And once you feel it for yourself, you don't need me anymore. You just need to pursue it on your own, inside yourself. That's really all we ever do. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay here to try to help as I can. But everybody's got this inside them. And no one needs an intermediary, a reverend or a priest or a rabbi or somebody. You have it inside yourself. You just need to access it. Loosen up that soil. Add some good fertilizer. Tend the soil. Give it water and sunlight. And let your seed grow. You can't force the seed. It has to grow on its own, but you can give it what it needs. That's what we're trying to do here. So that every day of your life, you can give your seed what it needs to grow. So that it gives you the divine presence itself, which is who you are. Let's see, everybody. I know I'm a lifelong learner and I must have an awakening every day. I nourish and tend spiritual growth. If I don't pay careful attention, my spiritual growth, it will wither and die. You have to keep at it. You have to keep at it. Thank you, Olga, and thank you, HJF, too. You have to keep at it. But there is a point, okay? Calling, awakening, realization, enlightenment. There is a point at which it feeds itself. The calling brings you to an awakening, and the awakening drives you within, where you face your inner demons, where you face your inner thoughts, where you face your attachments and your desires, And you battle with these things, not by fighting against them, but by quieting yourself. Just the opposite. By quieting yourself and being with the oneness of being with the peace itself. Not ignoring the struggles, but not grasping them either, even as they grasp you. This thing is deep peace underneath. And in a realized state, when you realize, and when I say realize, I mean you fully, completely understand you are not yourself. When the ego shatters and dies, that is an unmistakable change. It's an unmistakable change when the ego shatters and dies, and you see that you are not it. And that's when the pursuit of the divine, well, you become the pursued. And then all sorts of things happen. Difficult things and beautiful things. But it's like being chased by a lion or being chased by love. It produces all sorts of effects in the life of the devotee. And it gives all good gifts at the same time, even while it continues to tear apart the things that block the presence itself. And then comes the state of union, where the self is no more. And it's the most beautiful thing. Because gone are all desires and all suffering, and present is only love and light, bliss and paradise, understanding and awe. No more self in the way. No more thorns. No more hard-packed heart earth. No more birds to pick the seed. No more worms to eat the plants. No more sun to wither us. Because then it's this deep, connected understanding that's permanent. Permanent. Even in the turmoil of life. It's just not what one expects. It's just not what one thinks. Because if it is what one thinks, then you can be assured it's not that one thing. Because it's unspeakable. It's unspeakable. And if I could tell you, I would. Best I can do is try to help us all find it together. Feel the beingness itself. Thanks, Self Luminosity and Mary, and Sean and Summer, and Brian, and Olga again, HJF. I never get that right. Thank you for kindling our growth in the fire of light. You are a channel of God's love and instruction, can feel the vibration. That's my purpose, is to try the best I can to get out of the way so that this form can be a channel of the thing that is not me, the light itself, which is what you are, and all of us are. Bigger than us, bigger than me. You feel the vibration too, Olga. Ali sending love. Arian, your words are profound. Feel so much light. Where two or more are gathered, we help each other on the journey. That's right. That's why we gather together. That's what I think that the church was supposed to be all about. It's not about these ideas, but about the experience of the divine itself. That's what I think it's supposed to be. If there's something to grow, it grows faster together. Oh yeah, you ever notice that purple asters or goldenrod, they all grow in this huge clump, or roses for that matter. They grow better together, supporting each other, stronger together. Totally true. Wheat even, I suppose. If there's something, all right, let's see, totally quieting myself, observing illusions and an ego, I'm peeling away the layers of the onion. Eventually, I'll get to the pearl of the onion, the gift, the most desired place. Yes, exactly so. The deeper you go, the closer you get. Your words are seeds when spoken or shared, as food or like a watering can, and I am a plant receiving the nourishment, says Karen Elise. It's never me. But thank you, Karen. It's always not me. My job is to get out of the way. Same as yours. Stop the story that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we are, and just allow the presence to be inside us. It's really that simple. Physical pain is not fun. Speak to how to see divinity while being very sick. Yeah, physical pain. Thanks, Patricia. Definitely physical pain is not fun. And that's not a theoretical thing in my life. I'm sure it's not in yours either, Patricia. You wouldn't be asking it. It's a real thing in my life. I've had real pain. And it's hard. It's really hard to meditate when you're suffering. I know it is. It's really hard to focus your mind when all your mind is filled with pain. And that could be emotional pain or physical pain or any other kind of pain. That's just a hard thing. I think about it as in the moments when I have some clarity away from my pain, my physical pain, that's when I dive inside myself. Or I spend time staring at my pain itself, and I let my pain become my prayer. I stare at my own agony. I dive ever deeper in, even in the midst of the suffering. Now, when I have the flu or a cold, I just can't gather my mind to do it. If you have cancer or some disease like that, it's a hard thing. And if you have physical pain, try staring at that place of pain with your mind and let that be your prayer life. One of the things that happens is when you stare at pain, a meditative person lifts above the pain. And even though the pain is actually still there, it somehow is less than it was before. And you can float just above it. I hope that helps a little bit. It's like miracle grow when we are all together, says Shelley. Yeah. Or manure. I use seaweed myself when I can. It's like that's the miracle growth right there, seaweed in the garden. Peter, when you were on the other side, there was no you. Not when I was in the union of the oneness of being, there was no me. But I kept flickering in and out. I didn't quite become the total emptiness. I didn't stay being the total emptiness. When it was infilled inside of me, there was this oneness of being that I recognized myself as part of the infinite. But there was also this part of me that remained a memory of suffering of those I loved. But in a subsequent mystical experience, I became the music itself. And the moment I arrived back and recognized the light separate from me, that's when I popped out of the experience. Yeah, you can enter into union. You can be obliterated. I have had that experience. And as soon as I arrive back again, as soon as my ego shows up, there's the light, I always say in these situations. I'm out. As long as I'm not present to it, it stays present to me. So yes, I've been in the union state of being. And when I was dead, it was both of these things, a paradox. Still a little bit of me left, but me meaning Peter, but full recognition that Peter was never me, and that I was creature made of creator same substance, one in being. Not through my own effort. Just that's the way I was called into being. Created. It's so hard to talk about. Panamenya. I, like you, have chosen to live in a beautiful place on purpose. I've not had an ND. I don't know if it's real. I wish it were. It feels like this place is a prison. Is it? It feels like a prison to me. It feels like the place of stupidness for me. I'm like so stupid here compared to what I was like when I was dead. I can't show you near-death experience. All best I can try to do is help you find the oneness, the buzz, the vibration here. But you're going to have to go on your own journey. And if you want it, if you're wondering about it, then pursue it. And maybe in your pursuit, it will awaken for you, in you. You will awaken. You know, there are tens of millions of near-death experiencers all over the world. We come from all different walks of life and all different cultures. We speak all different languages. We have all different religions of our birth. And we all come back saying similar things, especially about love. There's an accumulation of evidence, which is not the same thing as proof, but it's pretty close. But really, if you want to know it for yourself, you have to go within. That's just the way it is. I didn't make up the rules. I read The Stream of Holy Madness, as John Teresa of Avila. Yeah, The Stream of Holy Madness, Teresa of Avila. Yeah, holiness, mysticism is kissing cousin to madness. I ought to know. Been there. I felt the slightest fragrance of what she was describing and crumpled into tears of joy. It's a crumpling for sure. A crumpling surrender of self into this state of sweet honeyed obliteration that definitely looks like madness on the outside, or it can, to those who don't know, to those who haven't seen it before or felt it before inside themselves. And Teresa, she put inside her words some of her joy. And those words carried right to your heart, John. Poetry, literature, music, art, food. A person who's in the presence of the divine can imbue whatever they produce with the divine light itself. Architecture, carpentry, electrical wiring, plumbing, anything. But if it's put in words and passed down through centuries, and you feel it down the centuries, 5 centuries later, it's because Teresa had power inside her that wasn't hers and is able to still communicate it because the divine is timeless. Which is why when sometimes people watch this video, they'll feel the divine presence here because it's not confined by time and space. Objects can be imbued with it, endowed with it, but they're only tastes of it. The real experience of it can only happen inside you and then is shared between people, can be shared. The Holy Madness of Teresa of Avila. Beth, I was trying to meditate during a period of long chronic pain and got the message that my body had pain, but I didn't. Totally true, Beth. Totally true. I've been there, where the peace is underneath and the pain is on top. I've likened this experience this way in the past, that the best way to learn to swim is when it's safe. And the hard way to learn to swim is when your boat goes down in a storm out at sea. And that's what pain and suffering is. That's what cancer can be. And so before you get sick, before you need to know how to swim, you practice swimming so that when you get to the place of suffering, you already have a preparation, a mental training, a physical training. And when you get to that place, your suffering can also open up a channel inside you for seeing. As Beth said, she saw she was not her pain. That's wisdom. It still hurt, no doubt. But it's a different perspective, a different perception. And that's what happens in realization. You get a new, unavoidable perception of shift that makes everything different. Not one thing, not two things, everything. Relationships to every person you know and to yourself, including to your pain. Let's see, no boundaries, eternal love, says Maggie. The essence one is what I experienced in my NDE, says Ruth. Yeah. One is essence. Essence, one is. That's what I experienced too. There are millions of us now speaking. Thanks for saying that. Tell everybody you know who has ears to hear and eyes to see. That's how it gets spread. But something had to be there to witness the experience when you were not the little self and couldn't tell about it. That's the funny thing, Marnia, is that when you're actually in the divine union itself, you're not present, and you can only see that you weren't present after you were there. You can't see it when you're there, because when you're there, you're not. There is no self present. It can only be seen in retrospect and only in part then. And I'm not making that up. That's the history of mysticism. That's the scholarship on mysticism. Mystics who end up in the divine state of union and the unitive state of oneness can't be present to it. And yet, when they come back, they talk about it. But always it's ineffable. It's ineffable because you can't be present in it. There is no you there when you are in the union state. The you only returns after you leave it, because there is a transient nature to mystical experience while we live in body. It's a paradox. I know that. The forest is a wonderful place to feel the source's presence, especially if you're alone or all one. Yeah, CG. I go into the nature all the time. That's where I live, so that I can have access to nature. Because the divine spirit, it's like prayer when you step outside, when you quiet yourself in nature, provided you're not in a boat in the middle of a storm. When you step outside in gentle nature and quiet yourself, spirit speaks to hearts who can hear, and it becomes prayer. And so empowering. The narratives we tell ourselves are so powerful. We must embrace the true inner monologue of love and life from that script, Willie T. Yeah, it's all about getting out of the way. It's all about eliminating the narrative. And that's what meditation does. It eliminates the narrative and shows that you are not the narrative. And when that happens, an awakening, then a realization, and maybe enlightenment. Those are all different stages. Thank you, Susie. My beliefs after NDE is consciousness is primal, Ruth. Consciousness is primal. And I don't think that's your belief, Ruth. I think you know that. I think that's a different thing. I think you know in the core of your being that consciousness is primal and primary. That's knowing. Once you experience it, all belief ends. I think you know it in the core of your being, Ruth. I always picture the birds carrying the seeds and spreading them elsewhere. Well, that's exactly what happens. I think about that too. Those seeds that fell in the path, they fed somebody else. Or they fed the birds and sustained the birds, and then the birds pooped them out and they became plants somewhere else. That's the way birds work. And we must embrace, let's see, none of the love is ever lost. Exactly. Keep spreading it, even if the ground isn't fertile. Exactly. The seeds, all the seeds I put out for the birds, it all gets eaten. Some of the seeds I put out in the clover I try to grow in my yard, that gets eaten. Some of the seeds I put in my garden, those get eaten. And either they get eaten by the animals, the birds, or they grow into plants, or they dissolve back into soil again, and nothing is lost. Love is never lost. It always finds a way to live and recycle. Absolutely, Ellen. Robin, are the divine and source the same? Yes. They're all different metaphorical names. There's a million names. Islam has 99 names for God. Google 99 names for God, Islam. You'll see. They're all names. And I got an email this week. Someone was chastising me for using the word God, not goddess. It's so hard in our culture when language has become weaponized and the patriarchy has so oppressed women that the word God becomes painful. I've been using the word God, and I am sorry if that has hurt people. That's not my intent. I thought about using the word Allah today, but that's a big barrier to jump over too. There's a million names for God, and none of them are accurate. It's always ineffable. They're always descriptive and often relational. The divine and the holy, the source, the self with a capital S, Atman, Brahma, Allah, Christ. It's one light, many names, and no name that can be pronounced by human tongue. They're always metaphors. They're always descriptors. The merciful, the loving, the bliss, the awe, the hope, the welcomer, the bestower, the giver. Peter, I love how you encourage hope out of the heart, even when it feels fragile. If there is such a person as a heart whisperer, you are it. Thanks, Susie. My goal is to be the heart whisperer, but not with my words. My goal is to let the message speak for itself inside of you so that you can find it inside yourself, because it is the source of all beingness. It pervades all the universe. It's present everywhere. And inside us, it leads us home again and gives us strength here in the midst of whatever turmoil we're facing, personal, national, or international, or even interior. It's the source of all balance, the center of all oneness. It's the thing inside you that is you. Birds equal angels, Russell, right on. They are in my world anyway. Susie's heart whisperer. I think we all need to challenge ourselves to use new words for God. I like the idea, Allah, etc. There is no rule. Yeah, I actually use a lot of the names, the 99 names of God from Islam. Like I use them a lot because they're such good descriptors. But I just wish that I wish we could use the word God without wounding people. I've been using it a lot more lately, simply because it's the common Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition. And it's just easier to use, have one word, but I hadn't realized that it was cutting people the way that it was. So I apologize for that. The ineffable one. It's the ineffable one. That's like 6 syllables. It's a mouthful. But yeah, let's see. Going back to work tomorrow after a nice holiday, it's easier to feel connected to the source on retreat than amid the chaos and demands of daily life. Hard to be in the world and not of it. That's the point, though. Okay, that's the point of it. Retreats are great. They're very helpful. But the point of Jesus's life, as opposed to Buddha's life, there's an image of Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, all blissed out, which is totally cool. That's what Buddha wanted to bring, to show the peace. But Jesus's life is all about living the spirit in the world, living the spiritual life in the context of the real world. And he got in trouble all the time. The spirit made him get in trouble all the time. He couldn't help himself from confronting it, from confronting darkness where it presented itself in the midst of the world. So how do we live this in the midst of the world? That's the calling. You can't retreat. Well, you could. How many of us go off to be monks after awakening or realization? Very few. We all try to live inside the world itself. And that's why we need our regular practice. A regular practice is a touchstone in our lives. To come back to our regular practice is the way, at least in my world, for me, I'm able to find a place of create balance at one place in my life on a regular basis so that throughout the rest of my life, I can lean into the decisions out of the center of my heart and therefore create more opportunity for myself and those around me to make the same choices out of the center of the heart. We live in the world. Even when we're on retreat, we're still inside the veil. So even when we go away to find the divine, we're still stuck inside the world. So no matter where we go, no matter where we are, we're in the same circumstance. It's just that sometimes the pressures are greater from the outside world. But the problem is the same. And the answer is always the same. Whether you're in the monastery, in a cave, or on retreat, or sitting on the subway in New York City, crowded in with COVID people, it's always about the interior journey. It's always about remaining connected inside yourself. Always make your eye one. Seek to make your eye one. And your body will be filled with light no matter where you go. We don't have a lot of time left here this morning. Let's see. Please remember to like the video. Thank you. Yes, please. I appreciate that very much. And subscribe. Thanks for coming, everybody, today. I see we have 85 folks here. I appreciate that. Thank you, Alfred. I super appreciate the gifts that you give to make this thing, Not Church Sundays, continue. It's an experiment for me, as I've said a bunch of times. My purpose here is to be a channel of the divine light. I've never been in pursuit of the things that God, the gifts that God can give. I've always only been in pursuit of the gift itself, of the bestower of the gifts, not the gifts. That's a big difference. And the difference is that when you seek the bestower, you get all the gifts. When you seek the gifts, maybe you just get one or two of them. But if you want the oneness of being, pursue it with all your heart, mind, and soul. Set it as your desire and your goal. And don't quit. Don't let the seeds fall on hard soil. Tend your soil. If the seeds fall on the thorns, pick them up and put them in the good soil. If your seeds fall on the thorns, work to weed the thorns out. If it falls on thin earth, add more soil to the earth above the ledges, or move the whole thing over to the better soil. It really matters what you want. That's really the first question. What do you want? If you want the idea of awakening, that really won't help you in the end, because you come away with an idea rather than the thing itself. And the thing itself, yeah, it's troublesome. It's as troublesome as it is a blessing. And that's just not me saying it. That's the history of mysticism. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. 4 minutes left. Ed Salisbury, after 92 days, my guru's ashram, I was told to go back into the world to continue to serve others, not self. Exactly. Exactly. I like to call him God. It's like going out of the closet, says Marnia. Sure. Jesus uses relational language about God. He says, Father, Mother. That's relational language, descriptive relational language about love. And I personally have no problem with God or him or her, because all of them are metaphors from where I sit, and not one of them is real. All of them are descriptors of relationship. All right, we got only a couple minutes here. The darkness and the violence is in the slaughterhouse. Yeah, for sure. God is just easier than debating what word to use. That's all, plain and simple. That's kind of where I'm at, but I don't want to hurt people. What a pure heart you have. It's not my heart. Never mistake that. That's the thing of it. When a heart becomes pure, it's not yours that makes the purity. That's what we're talking about. It's the purity itself that makes itself known. So thanks, but not me. It's not me. Let's see. I feel your loving intention to share the light. That is my loving intention, is to share the light. And thanks for prayers to continue Not Church. It feeds your soul, Kelly. I hope so. That's what I'm after, is feeding. Be vegan. Yeah, what should we eat? The disciples asked Jesus. We'll touch on that next week in Thomas. I feel that connection too. It's such a blessing, says Lee. That's thank you for such beautiful energy. Thank you. I can feel the divine in you and all of us. Exactly. Thank you, Arian. All right, I've only got 2 minutes. I'm going to have to say, thanks for the thing about the pearl and the swine. We'll someday talk about that. We're going to go because I got a minute here. So let's spend a moment in centered breath. We thank you for gathering us here today. May we become what you want us to be. Plant your seeds in our soil. Give us the good soil. Keep our focus upon you. Let us feel you so that we may want you, and in our wanting find you. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm out of time. Peace and love, my friends. Peace and love. And Angus, if you want to chat, come to Mystic Tea Salon. We can talk about that. I'd like to. Peace and love, everybody.